Hello, Daniel Roloff here again, and this is part two. If you got here on accident, part one is linked down below, but most of you probably just here for this class because this is the only time it's going to be published. So, moving on, another social theory lens to kind of look through biosocial theory is the humanistic theory. So, in this theory, we take a look at the subject's kind of strengths and liabilities, their experience, the ways that they interacted with the world on the whole biopsychosocial scale. And the nice thing about this is that it can be applied really broadly and that it can be individualized to the individual, and that we could take these strengths and kind of compare them and show how they go up against adversity and the things that are going against them. And we take a look at, like my subject's 24 years in the military and his college experience, his 12 years working outside and investing, and look at all these skills and kind of see how he has built protections for himself and the ability to live a comfortable life. So the other thing we can look at too is like his level of fitness. So Jadzorsky, Lee, and Trojanworski were able to actually see there was a very, very highly correlated benefit of physical activity, um, and how that affected the brain and how that affected the activities in people that were between the ages of, I believe their study was 65 to 80, and even just a small amount of cardiovascular activity, even as small as walking, has positive effects. The other things we can take a look at too are like age-related anxiety. So there is a expectation in many cultures that the older you are, the less likely you were to be able to do anything. Virility is on the decline generally in older age, and this causes a certain amount of anxiety. And Jan Silverstein and Welber found that there were certain patterns, and among his, as a Caucasian male, he's less likely to experience issues with age-related anxiety. And however, there still are. It's still a factor. There's still things that he needs to be able to address and recognize, in that he is not a 24-year-old man anymore. You know, he's not even a 45-year-old man. He's dealing with things in a different way, and he has to take a look at risk benefits much differently. The same way he's looking at his finances, the same way he's looking at his relationships, because he's at a point where small course corrections might be the only thing he's able to do. He's not able to make long-term decisions. He's in a point to where he's living off his investments. He is basically planned as far as he can plan, and if something major happens, you know, he has some precautions, he has some plan Bs in there, but there's not a whole lot. So then we talk about limitations to these theories. So one of the limitations to Erikson's psychosocial theory is that the ages and stages are very restricting, and it can be argued that, such as Osborne did, that entering retirement is something that is a big enough change in the person's life that they've actually go through each one of these stages again, from the trust, mistrust, shame and doubt, guilt, inferiority, identity confusion, isolation, stagnation. They go through everything. because it is such a dramatic change, and it's a change culturally. It's a change that happens in their own minds. Their bodies are changing, so the person's identity completely shifts, and they could possibly experience all this again. The other, so Rogers has some limitations as well, such as the constructs being too abstract. And going back and looking at some of these, trust versus mistrust. What does that really mean? Does that mean that you trust everything? Does it mean that you don't? And who's the one that says that this is a trusting individual, this is an untrusting? Or who's to say that someone is truly picked industry over inferiority or intimacy over isolation? Because these are very subjective things, and it's very easy to kind of take a look at them too and go back to the first point and say that they don't just happen in one step. Culture is in flux, so there is things that happen later in life now. So marriage, the subject, he married a little bit earlier. He married at 24, which is closer to the norm. Back when he got married the first time in the 70s, when he got married the second time in the 80s, he was in his 30s, which is closer to what we're seeing now. Having multiple careers. That's not something his father did. His father was an electrician, and that's the one thing he did. Ended up, I believe he put in 26 years working for steel companies as an electrician. So minus that stint that he did has his own electrical company for a short time. And the other thing is too is that these theories is not universal across cultures. So we take a look at different cultures, and different cultures see people as adults at different ages. They may have different ways that they express themselves. They may have different ways that they view things. They may be less likely to fall under our Western approaches to what we see as intimacy or what we see as isolation. And those may be cultural norms for them. And as far as the humanistic theories, very vague definitions on what humanistic means. Humanistic theory is very validating, and it is nice because we can kind of form the theory to work with the subject. But that's its very weakness too, in that I can talk about how great that the subject has A, B, C, and D, but if we take another subject and bring them in, they may not have any of those properties. I could take the same approach and list off their attributes, but they're not comparable. So when we're working with it, we can't really compare, we can't predict, and that's also because there's no real theory that goes with it. There's no baseline. There's no model that we can. It's more of a art, and more of the clinician's own bias, which we go into that too. It's bias on part of the clinician. So if the clinician sees all these positive things, might be overlooking something, or may not have asked a question, may not have hit a point and seen something that may be different, seen something that may be a factor because that's not something that's in my cultural heritage. It's something that's not in my repertoire. It's not in. I may not see something such as religion. So if the patient, he believes in God, he doesn't have a certain religion. I look at that and say, all right, so he has a comfort with a comfortable level of spirituality. and it's not a problem in his life. Whereas another clinician who may have more of a religious background, they may see that as a problem. They may see that as a deficit, or they may see that as, they may agree with me. They may see it as something that's positive. So again, it's kind of mushy. There's not a lot of good uh, boundaries and barriers on it. And with that, I conclude. These are my references. Thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing from my fellow students' feedback and hear what the instructor has to say. Thank you very much.